The ground at the Texas launch site was a mess of burnt dirt and twisted steel beams. Pad 1 had already survived 11 massive Starship flights and dozens of tests where the engines stayed on the ground. Every time those 33 Raptor engines fired up, they hit the pad with millions of pounds of force. To give you an idea of that power, it is like having 107 47 jumbo jets all pushing down on one spot at the exact same time. The steel legs holding the rocket were starting to bend. The pipes carrying the fuel were leaking from the vibration. Most people in the rocket business looked at that damage and said the pad was finished. They said you would have to shut down the whole site for 3 years just to fix the foundation. You know how it feels when a road crew shuts down the main highway in your town for months just to fix one tiny bridge? That is what the experts thought would happen here. Boeing and NASA had tried to fix smaller pads in the past and got stuck in meetings for years. They found that once you pour that much concrete, you can't just change your mind and move a pipe. But SpaceX did not have years to wait. They had more rockets coming off the factory floor every week, and they needed a place to fly them. The heat was the biggest enemy for the engineers. When a Starship takes off, it creates a flame that is hotter than a furnace used to melt down old cars for scrap metal. This heat doesn't just burn things, it actually turns the air into a shockwave that can shatter concrete like it is a thin piece of glass. NASA saw this back in the 1960s with the Apollo rockets. After every single launch, they had to spend months scraping away burnt metal and pouring new cement. It was a never-ending cycle of breaking things and then spending millions to fix them. Because of this, the experts believed you could never have a high-cadence pad. That is just a simple way of saying a pad that launches over and over again like a gate at a busy airport. They thought the ground would literally melt away into a giant hole after a few flights. They also worried about the cost. Every time you have to fix a pad, you are using millions of dollars. If you are a government agency, you have to be very careful with that money. But SpaceX is a private company that treats every dollar like it's their own. They realized that if they didn't solve the pad problem, they would never get to Mars. They knew they had to find a way to make the ground as tough as the rocket itself. Here is how they actually did it. The breakthrough came when the engineers stopped looking at the pad as a static building and started looking at it as a machine made of parts. They realized they didn't need to make the pad unbreakable, they just needed to make it easy to fix. They came up with a new design for the orbital launch mount, which is the big metal ring the rocket sits on before it flies. Instead of one solid piece of steel, they built it in sections. Think of it like a wooden deck on the back of your house. If one board rots out, you don't tear down the whole deck. You just unscrew that one board and put a new one in its place. They did the exact same thing with the launch stand. They used a new kind of super strong steel that stays stiff even when it gets red hot. They also installed a massive water system that acts like a giant high-pressure fire extinguisher. It sprays thousands of gallons of water every second right into the heart of the flame. This water turns into steam instantly, and that steam carries the heat away before it can melt the metal. This was the key innovation that changed everything. This water system is really the secret to the whole operation. It uses huge tanks that are pressurized with gas, so when the valve opens, the water comes out like it's being shot from a cannon. This doesn't just stop the heat, it also kills the noise. Rocket noise is so loud it can actually vibrate the rocket until the bolts shake loose and it falls apart. The water acts like a big pillow that soaks up all that shaking. Because of this, SpaceX can launch a rocket on a Monday and have the pad ready to go again by Friday. They also used special robots to go into the dangerous areas to check the welds and the pipes. In the old days, you'd have to wait weeks for the metal to cool down before a human could even get close. Now, the robots do the work in a few hours. They also move the big fuel tanks, the ones holding the liquid methane and oxygen, further back behind big walls made of dirt and steel. This let them keep working on the pad upgrades, even while the tanks were full and ready for the next flight. This saved them months of time that would have been wasted draining and filling tanks. When you look at the scoreboard, the victory is clear for everyone to see. NASA is currently building a rocket called the SLS. One single launch of that rocket costs $4.1 billion. To put that in perspective, that is enough money to buy a brand new car for about 100,000 families. And for all that money, they only fly it once every year or two. SpaceX is aiming to get the cost of a Starship launch down to $10 million. That means you could could launch 410 Starships for the price of just one SLS. It is like the difference between buying a private jet every time you want to go on vacation versus just buying a bus ticket. Boeing has also been struggling with this. They got $4.2 billion from the government to build the Starliner capsule, but it had a major failure in 2019 and has been delayed over and over again. While Boeing is stuck in office meetings, SpaceX is out in the mud in Texas actually building things and seeing what works. They have a culture where the best idea wins no matter who says it. This is why they are winning the race to space. This isn't just about being fast, it's about protecting resources and moving the mission forward. In the space business, time is the most expensive thing you have. Every day you aren't launching is a day you are losing money. By rebuilding Pad 1 in just a few months, SpaceX proved they could move faster than anyone in history thought possible. They are already building a second pad, called Pad 2, right next to the first one. By early 2026, they want to be able to launch 2 giant rockets at the same time. No other company or country on Earth can do that. Even China, which is moving very fast with their own space program, doesn't have a system that can launch and catch a rocket this big. This is a pattern of success that is hard to ignore. SpaceX saw that the old pads were a bottleneck, a place where everything gets stuck and slows down, and they decided to break that bottleneck. You've probably seen the videos of these rockets landing back on the pad. It looks like a movie, but it is real engineering mastery. The rocket is about 40 stories tall and weighs as much as 15 fully loaded pickup trucks, which is about 100. It falls from the sky and then flips around at the very last second to land. To make this work on the ground, the pad has to be perfectly level and incredibly strong. SpaceX used computers that make decisions in a split second to guide the rocket into the chopstick arms on the tower. During one of the tests, a small part of the engine didn't move quite right, but the computer caught it and fixed it instantly. This is the kind of technical mastery that makes the impossible look like a routine job. They aren't just guessing, they are using data from thousands of sensors to make every flight better than the one before it. The money side of this is also a very big deal. When you can reuse a rocket and a pad, the financial forensics show that you can save billions of dollars over time. Most of the cost of a rocket is in the high-tech engines and the expensive metal. If you throw those into the ocean after one flight, you are basically taking a pile of money and setting it on fire. Imagine if you had to buy a new car every time you drove to the grocery store. Nobody would ever go to the store because it would be too expensive. By making the pad and the rocket reusable, SpaceX is finally making space travel affordable. This has serious consequences for the older companies that refuse to change their ways. Companies like Boeing are now finding it hard to compete because their rockets cost way too much. They are being left behind because they didn't think it was possible to do what SpaceX is doing every week. The breakthrough at Pad 1 is part of a much bigger revolution. It's not just about one launch site, it's about changing how we think about building things in space. If we can build a pad that handles the fire of 33 engines, we can build a base on the moon that lasts. If we can swap out parts of a launch stand in a week, we can fix a colony on Mars in a week. The engineers at Starbase are teaching the world how to live and work in extreme places. They are turning the impossible into a standard way of working. Every time a pipe doesn't melt and every time a concrete slab doesn't crack, they are proving that they have mastered the forces of nature. This is the result of thousands of hours of hard work and a refusal to take no for an answer. They measured the heat, they tested the steel, and they proved the experts wrong. The future of humanity depends on being able to leave the planet and explore. If we stay on one planet forever, we're at risk from asteroids or other disasters. To become a species that lives on many planets, we need a bridge to the stars that doesn't break. Pad 1 is the beginning of that bridge. It is a place where we are learning to handle the most powerful machines ever built by humans. The $4.1 billion spent on a single SLS flight could fund 410 Starship missions. With 410 flights, you could send 1 million tons of food, water, and tools to the moon. You could build a whole city up there. This is why these numbers matter so much to everyone. It's not just about saving money, it's about what that money allows you to actually do. It allows us to dream bigger and go further than we ever have before. Looking at the progress over the last few years is like watching a miracle happen right in front of us. We went from small rockets that often blew up on the pad to giant ships that can land on their own. We went from pads that were destroyed after one flight to pads that get upgraded and fixed in just weeks. This is what happens when you combine engineering skill with a real drive to be the best. They don't care about how things were done 50 years ago. They only care about what works today. This is the true meaning of the magician archetype. archetype. It's about taking the raw materials of the Earth and turning them into something that can reach the stars. They are using their brains to turn the impossible into the possible, and they are doing it in the mud of South Texas. This work will last for a long time to come. Our kids will grow up in a world where a trip to the moon is like a trip to another country on a plane. They will look back at the old days of throwing rockets away and think it was a crazy waste of money. They will see the launch towers in Texas as the starting point for a new era in history. The impossible is now just a routine part of the morning shift. This happened because a group of people decided to ignore the experts and trust their own math. They took the fire and the noise and they built a doorway to the stars. Every successful launch is a victory for everyone who believes in progress. It's a reminder that we can solve the hardest problems if we are willing to work hard and think for ourselves. As the second Pad 2 comes online in 2026, the speed of discovery will only get faster and faster. We will see more flights, more tests, and more breakthroughs. The transition from the old way of doing things to the new SpaceX way is almost finished. The gateway is open and the path to Mars is being paved with the steel and concrete of Starbase. Pads of South Texas are at the center of it all. It's a great time to be alive and watching the stars. The people working at Starbase are like modern-day explorers. They don't have a map for where they are going, so they have to build the map as they go. They are solving problems that have stumped the smartest people for 60 years. For example, how do you stop a rocket from melting its own legs when it lands? In the past, the answer was just to make the legs thicker and heavier, but that makes the rocket hard to fly. SpaceX found a way to use the rocket's own cold fuel to cool down the engines from the inside. This is the kind of smart thinking that makes Starship special. It weighs 100 tons but can still land as softly as a bird. This is what true mastery looks like. And every time a Starship takes off, it is a test for the whole world to see. There is no hiding if things go wrong. But SpaceX doesn't mind if things break during a test flight. They actually want to find the breaking point so they can fix it. If a pipe bursts at 1,000 degrees, they know they need to build it to handle 1,200 degrees next time. This is how they move so much faster than anyone else in the business. Other companies spend 5 years in meetings trying to make a perfect plan on paper. SpaceX builds a rocket in 5 months, flies it, sees what breaks, and fixes it for the next one. This fail-fast method is what allowed them to rebuild Pad 1 in a fraction of the time it would take NASA. It's a completely different way of thinking about how to build things. When we talk about the SLS costing $4.1 billion, it's hard to even imagine that much money. Imagine if you had a stack of $1,000 bills. To reach $4.1 billion, that stack would be as tall as a 30-story office building. All that money is gone for good after just one flight. It's a huge amount of your tax dollars disappearing into the ocean every time they launch. SpaceX is changing that forever. By making everything reusable, they are bringing the cost down to something that a normal company can afford. This is going to open up space to thousands of regular people, not just a few government astronauts. It's the democratization of the stars. It means that in our lifetime, we might see hotels in orbit or mines on big asteroids. The work being done in Texas is also a story of justice for the taxpayers. For a long time, the big rocket companies had no competition at all. They could charge whatever they wanted and take as long as they liked to finish a project. SpaceX came along and showed the world that there was a better way to do it. They showed that you could be fast, cheap, and successful all at the same time. This has forced the whole industry to change how they work. Now everyone is trying to build reusable rockets, but SpaceX has a 10-year head start on everyone else. They have already done the hard work of failing and learning. They have already built the Pad 1 and Pad 2 are the most advanced launch sites in the world, and they were built by a team that started with almost nothing. The chopstick arms on the launch tower are another great example of this mastery. Instead of landing on legs, the rocket is caught right out of the air. This saves weight because the rocket doesn't have to carry heavy landing legs into space. It's a crazy idea that everyone said would never work in the real world, but on the very first try with the giant booster, they caught it. It was a moment that changed spaceflight forever. It showed that we can control these giant machines with incredible precision. It showed that we have the strategic strategic intelligence to think outside the box and find a better way to do things. It was a victory for the people who still have big dreams. As we look toward the future, the goal is clear to see. We want to be a species that lives on many worlds. To do that, we need to be able to launch thousands of ships every single year. Rebuilding Pad 1 was a vital step in making that happen for real. It proved that we can build launch sites that are as tough as the rockets they support. It proved that we can handle the fire and the fury of the largest engine ever made by man. And it proved that we are ready for the next great adventure in the stars. The path to Mars is open, and it starts on a small patch of land in South Texas. SpaceX didn't just land a rocket, they made it a routine for the whole world to watch. While others struggled with old technology, they built a system that works over and over again. The impossible became the everyday infrastructure of our space program. Now they are aiming for the next big goal at 10 times the scale of anything we've done. The dream of living on Mars is no longer just a story for movies. It is an engineering problem that is being solved right now, one launch at a time. This is the future, and it is happening faster than anyone ever imagined it. Every bolt turned and every pipe welded at Starbase is a step closer to that dream. We are no longer just looking at the stars, we are reaching for them, and we are doing it with the best engineering the world has ever seen. The fire of the engines is the fire of human progress, and it is burning brighter than ever before. This is the story of how we turned the impossible into the routine, and it is only the beginning. The engineers didn't just rebuild the pad, they rebuilt our expectations. They showed us that the limits we thought were real were actually just hurdles to be cleared. When the flame trench section bent more than they expected, they didn't stop the program, they just redesigned it on the fly. When a thruster on Ship 39 had a minor misalignment, the autonomous controls fixed it before anyone even noticed. These weren't setbacks, they were lessons. Each near miss made the system stronger and more reliable. This is how you build a future that lasts. You don't aim for perfection on the first try, you aim for mastery through constant improvement. The revolution isn't just happening in the air, it's happening on the ground. By making the pads reusable, SpaceX has changed the economics of the entire industry. Investors are seeing returns faster than ever, and governments are planning missions that used to be considered impossible. Moon bases and Mars colonies are moving from the drawing board to the launch pad. This is the infrastructure revolution that will carry us into the next century. We are building the roads and bridges of the solar system. And just like the roads in your town, they need to be tough, reliable, and easy to maintain. Pad 1 is the prototype for everything that comes next. The story of the Starbase rebuild is a story of human will. It shows that when we stop listening to the doubters and start trusting our own ability to learn and adapt, there is nothing we can't do. The fire of the Raptor engines is a powerful thing, but the fire of human curiosity and determination is even more powerful. We have taken the most extreme forces in nature and learned how to harness them. We have taken the impossible and made it our daily routine. The stars are no longer out of reach. They are just the next stop on the journey, and that journey starts today, right here on the ground, with a pad that was built to withstand the fire. The transition is complete, the impossible is routine, and the future is wide open for all of us.